The grand hall of Raylath shimmered with silver light that poured from floating crystals suspended in the air. The nobles of the Raylath Empire stood in a wide circle, their long robes woven with threads that caught every flicker of light. Their voices carried soft laughter as the emperor spoke about a new gesture of friendship toward the humans. Every noble knew it was not true friendship they intended, but a quiet insult wrapped in ceremony. At the center of the hall stood Princess Mira, youngest of the royal family. Her skin glowed faintly blue, and her eyes reflected the hall like mirrors of liquid glass. She stood tall and silent while the nobles whispered around her. They all knew her secret. Mira was barren. Since her birth, her body had resisted every healing process of Raylathian science. In a society where the continuation of bloodlines meant power, her condition had made her a figure of pity and quiet ridicule. The emperor lifted his crystal scepter. His deep voice echoed against the smooth walls. As a sign of peace, he announced, we shall send our beloved Princess Mira to the humans of Earth. She will live among them and represent our culture. A bridge between our worlds. The courtiers bowed, but the smirks were barely hidden. They thought it was amusing. The humans, who still used metal ships and breathed polluted air, would now receive a princess who could never produce an heir. To them, it was a joke hidden behind the mask of diplomacy. Mira understood the truth of the decision. She was not being honored but cast away. Yet she showed no sign of emotion. She bowed gracefully before her father, her silver hair falling across her shoulders. I accept the honor, she said softly. Her voice was calm, but inside her heart felt heavy and confused. That night, as she stood by her window overlooking the glowing spires of the capital, she watched the twin moons rise over the horizon. The city shone like a sea of light. Somewhere far away, the human world turned beneath a single sun. She had seen pictures of it during her studies. A green and blue sphere filled with clouds and oceans. Crude by Raylathian standards, yet strangely alive. She wondered what kind of people lived there. When the ship was prepared, Mira was dressed in formal robes of silver and pale blue. Her escort, a small group of attendants and guards, followed her onto the vessel. The ship itself was shaped like a long crystal blade, its surface glowing with soft energy. As it rose through the atmosphere, Mira looked back at her world. For the first time, she felt as if she might never see it again. The journey took several days through the quiet corridors of space. Raylathian ships moved faster than light, but travel between empires required careful coordination with human navigation systems. During the journey, Mira read reports about human history and culture. The humans were strange creatures, she thought. They fought often among themselves, yet they also built cities from dust and turned deserts into gardens. They had survived diseases, wars, and disasters without the advanced technology of the stars. Something about their determination stirred her curiosity. When the ship finally approached the human space station orbiting New Terra, the crew prepared for diplomatic arrival. Mira stood at the front window as the human structure came into view. It was not elegant like Raylathian design. It was made of metal plates, rough and practical, with bright lights marking its edges. Yet there was a certain charm in its simplicity. It looked like something built by hands that refused to stop working. The docking process was smooth. Human officers waited in a large hall lined with banners of blue and white. At their center stood Captain Daniel, a representative of the Earth Colony Alliance. He was a tall man with calm eyes and a steady expression. His uniform was simple, clean, and practical. When Mira stepped out of the ship, Daniel bowed slightly. "Welcome, Princess Mira," he said in a clear voice. "We are honored by your presence." Mira tilted her head, surprised by his tone. It was respectful but not fearful. He did not look at her as if she were fragile or strange. She nodded in return. "The honor is shared," she replied. Her voice was gentle but carried authority. Daniel escorted her through the station, showing her the different sections. Human engineers worked quietly at their stations, adjusting screens and speaking through communicators. The air smelled faintly of oil and ozone. Everything around her was functional, made for purpose rather than beauty. Yet the humans greeted her with polite smiles, some with shy curiosity. Later, Daniel guided her to her quarters. It was a modest room with white walls, a soft bed, and a window showing the curve of New Terra below. "We will depart for the planet in the morning," he explained. "It is a new colony still growing, but we will do everything to make you comfortable." Mira nodded and thanked him. When he left, she stood by the window for a long time, watching the planet turn beneath her. The colors were rich and vibrant, so different from the crystal blues of her own world. She felt something stir within her, a quiet sense of possibility. The next morning, she joined Daniel and his small crew aboard a shuttle. The descent through the atmosphere filled the window with bright fire, then clouds, and finally the soft blue of the sky. Below, she saw forests, rivers, and fields stretching to the horizon. The settlement was a cluster of white domes and metallic towers surrounded by farmland. When they landed, children and workers gathered to greet them. The people looked different from one another, with many colors of skin and hair. Yet they shared one expression, welcome. No one laughed at her arrival. No one whispered behind her back. They simply smiled and offered greetings in their language. Daniel introduced her to the colony's governor and a group of scientists who managed the settlement. Mira observed how humans interacted with ease, helping one another without waiting for orders. They lacked the graceful precision of Ralithians, but their energy filled the air like a living current. In the following days, Mira began learning about the colony's systems. Daniel explained how humans grew food in artificial soil, purified water, and used solar energy to power their homes. She was fascinated by how they turned simple materials into tools and machines. On Ralith, such tasks were handled by automated systems, but here, humans worked with their own hands. One evening, Mira joined Daniel on a walk outside the settlement. The air was cool, and the twin suns of New Terra cast long golden shadows across the fields. Daniel carried a tablet taking readings of soil composition, while Mira observed the plants that shimmered faintly under the light. "Your people are very creative," she said. "You build beauty from almost nothing," Daniel smiled. "We try. Humans like challenges. We may not have your technology, but we make do with what we have." Mira studied him for a moment. There was pride in his tone, but not arrogance. She found that unusual. Among her people, pride was often sharp and cold. Here it felt warm, almost gentle. At night, when she returned to her quarters, she thought about the laughter of her own people when they had sent her away. She remembered the cold faces of the nobles who had looked down on her since childhood. She wondered what they would think if they could see the humans now, simple yet full of life and willpower. Days turned into weeks. Mira began to adjust to the rhythm of human life. She learned to walk the open fields without the protective shields she was used to. She learned to share meals with the workers, tasting food grown from the planet's soil instead of synthesized nutrition. Every experience felt new and real. Daniel often visited to teach her about human customs and history. He told her stories of old Earth, how humanity had once lived under a single sun facing endless hardships. He spoke of explorers who had crossed oceans and discovered worlds without knowing what awaited them. Mira listened with quiet fascination. The courage of humans seemed to come from something deeper than power. It came from the belief that no boundary was final. One night, as the colony lights glowed in the distance, Mira stood outside looking at the stars. The sky was vast and clear. She could see the faint glimmer of Ralith's distant light far away. For the first time in her life, she did not feel small or cast aside. She felt part of something growing and alive. Her new journey had just begun. What had started as a joke among nobles was becoming something far greater. A meeting of two worlds that neither side yet understood. The morning on New Terra began with a soft golden light that stretched across the colony fields. The two suns rose together, bathing the land in warm colors that shimmered on the metal roofs of the settlement. Princess Mira woke early, listening to the quiet hum of machines outside her window. Human engineers were already at work, repairing solar panels and tending to crops. She stood by the glass and watched them move with steady rhythm. There was something peaceful about it. Every person had a task and worked with focus, not because of command, but because they wanted to build something lasting. Daniel came to her quarters soon after sunrise. His uniform was simple, the same gray color worn by most of the colony workers. He greeted her with a polite smile. "Good morning, Princess. The governor has arranged a tour for you today. You will see how our colony grows food and manages energy. It is not grand, but we are proud of what we have made here." Mira nodded and followed him outside. The air smelled of green grass and fresh soil. The colony stretched across the plain like a cluster of white domes connected by narrow paths. Small vehicles rolled between the buildings carrying tools and supplies. The people they passed greeted Daniel with friendly words and nodded to Mira with respectful curiosity. She returned their greetings with grace. They began the tour at the agricultural center. Long, transparent tunnels filled with plants stretched across the field. Inside, humans worked among rows of green leaves. Mira stepped carefully along the narrow walkway, while Daniel explained how they had adapted crops to survive the planet's twin suns and unpredictable rain cycles. He showed her how the irrigation systems collected water from the atmosphere and how the plants were nourished by nutrient mixes designed in the colony's labs. Mira was fascinated. On Raylith, food was produced by vast automated factories, cold and efficient. Here, everything was alive. She watched a young worker kneel to adjust a small valve near the roots of a glowing fruit vine. His hands were rough and his face shone with effort. He looked up and smiled at her before returning to work. The sight stirred a strange warmth in her chest. "You do not use machines for this?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "We use machines where we must, but people enjoy working with their hands. It gives them a sense of purpose. We believe effort connects us to the land." Mira thought about that. On her world, such a belief would sound primitive, yet there was beauty in it. She could see it in their faces, in the careful way they handled every leaf and seed. After visiting the farms, Daniel led her to the energy core. The building stood tall at the center of the colony, humming with quiet power. Inside, engineers managed systems that drew energy from sunlight and underground heat. Mira studied the panels and devices with curiosity. Human design was not elegant like Raylifian structures, but it was clever. Every component had a reason to exist and nothing was wasted. Daniel handed her a pair of protective gloves and invited her to assist in a small maintenance check. She hesitated but accepted. He guided her hands as she tightened a bolt on a panel. The contact was brief, but she noticed the warmth of his hand and the steadiness of his movement. It was a small act, yet she felt part of their world for the first time. When the inspection ended, they stepped outside. A gentle wind moved across the plains. The twin suns were high in the sky, casting soft shadows on the ground. Mira looked at the settlement from a small rise nearby. The white domes glimmered under the light, surrounded by growing fields. "It is beautiful," she said quietly. Daniel smiled beside her. "It is home for many of us. Earth became crowded long ago, so we build new homes among the stars. New Terra is still young, but one day it will be a true world of its own." She turned to face him. "You speak as if you believe anything is possible." "I think humans must believe that," he replied. "We are not the strongest or the smartest in the galaxy, but we do not stop trying. That is how we survive." His words stayed in her mind for the rest of the day. Later, Mira visited the colony school where children were learning about science and history. The young ones stared at her in awe, whispering about her shining skin and bright hair. The teacher invited her to speak. She hesitated but agreed. Standing before the class, she told them about the art of Raylith, about the crystal gardens and floating cities. The children listened with wide eyes, and their curiosity filled the room with laughter and excitement. When she finished, a small girl raised her hand. "Princess, do your people have stories like ours?" Mira smiled. "Yes, we have many stories, but most of them are serious. Humans seem to enjoy happy endings." The children laughed, and she found herself laughing with them. It felt new and pleasant. As days turned into weeks, Mira became part of the colony's routine. She joined the workers in the greenhouses, learning to tend the plants. She helped the scientists study soil samples and even assisted Daniel in reviewing reports for the colony's council. Her curiosity grew each day, and so did her understanding of what it meant to live among humans. Daniel noticed the change in her. The princess, who had arrived silent and distant, was now smiling more often. She asked questions, listened carefully, and shared her thoughts. One evening, he found her sitting by a small pond outside the settlement, watching the sun set behind the hills. The light reflected on the water, turning it into a pool of gold. "You seem at peace here," he said gently. Mira looked at him. "I did not expect to feel peace. When I left Raylith, I felt only shame. My people sent me away because I could not give them what they valued most. But here no one speaks of such things. No one mocks me." Daniel sat beside her. "We value different things. On Earth and now on New Terra, we believe worth is not in what one can give, but in what one can learn and share. You have already given us much, Princess. Your knowledge and your presence remind us that the galaxy is wider than we can imagine." His words were simple, but they touched something deep within her. For the first time, she felt seen not as a burden or symbol but as a person. She looked back at the glowing sky and felt her heart lighten. Over time, Mira began to adapt to the human way of life. Her delicate hands, once used only for formal gestures, now worked with soil and instruments. She learned to repair small machines, to cook simple meals, and to care for the plants she had planted. Her silver hair caught sunlight as she walked through the fields, and the workers began to greet her as one of their own. At night, she would often study human music. The colony library stored countless recordings from Earth. The melodies fascinated her. They were full of emotion, rising and falling like the breath of life itself. She practiced one of the small instruments Daniel brought her, a wooden flute made by one of the settlers. Though her fingers were unused to the shape, she soon learned to play gentle tunes that drifted through the colony at dusk. Daniel sometimes listened from a distance, standing near the workshop after his duties. The soft music carried across the air, and even the workers paused to listen. It became a quiet symbol of the new bond between Ralith and humanity. One day, a message came from the Human Council on Earth requesting progress reports. Mira prepared part of the presentation. When Daniel watched her speak before the council through the communication screen, he noticed how confident she had become. Her voice was calm and steady. She spoke of how humans and Ralithians could learn from one another, how their cooperation could lead to new understanding of both worlds. The council members were impressed, and even the governor praised her insight. That night, the colony held a small celebration to mark the success. Lights decorated the square, and the people danced to old Earth songs. Mira joined them hesitantly at first, but soon laughter surrounded her. Daniel offered his hand, and she accepted. They danced with the others beneath the twin moons. For a moment, she forgot the cold halls of Ralith and the judgmental eyes of her people. She felt alive, free, and part of something warm. When the celebration ended, she looked up at the stars. Somewhere beyond those lights was the world that had rejected her, yet she no longer felt like the same person. New Terra had changed her in ways she could not yet understand. Her skin shimmered softly under the moons, and Daniel noticed a faint glow tracing her veins. "Are you well?" he asked with concern. Mira smiled and nodded. "I feel stronger than before. It is as if your world is giving me something my body always needed." Neither of them knew that this small change marked the beginning of something extraordinary. What the nobles of Ralith had once called a joke was slowly turning into a miracle shaped by courage, kindness, and hope. Morning came softly to New Terra. The first rays of light touched the colony domes and warmed the fields that stretched far beyond the settlement. Princess Mira walked through the garden paths with quiet steps. Dew sparkled on every leaf, and the air smelled of earth and life. She felt calm, yet something inside her had begun to change. It was not pain or sickness, but a gentle energy that moved through her body in strange rhythm. Her skin shimmered brighter than usual, and the blue veins beneath her arms glowed faintly when the light touched them. At first, she thought it was only a reaction to the planet's twin suns. Ralithian bodies were sensitive to light and atmosphere, and she believed her system was adapting. But as the days passed, the glow grew stronger. It appeared whenever she worked near Daniel or when she felt deep emotion. She did not speak of it at once, fearing it might seem strange or ungrateful. Daniel noticed the change too. One evening, as they worked together in the lab analyzing samples of local soil, he saw the soft light along her fingers. It pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. He looked at her gently and asked, "Does this happen often?" Mira hesitated before answering. "It started a few days ago. It does not hurt, but it feels new, as if my body is waking from sleep." Daniel ran a small scanner to check for radiation or infection, but the results showed nothing harmful. The readings surprised him. Her cells were active, more active than before, repairing themselves at remarkable speed. He printed the report and handed it to her. "Whatever it is, it seems your body is healing itself. Perhaps New Terra agrees with you." She looked at the glowing lines on the paper. "Healing," she repeated quietly. That word carried deep meaning for her. On Ralith, doctors had tried for years to fix the flaw in her system that made her barren, yet nothing had worked. Could this world be doing what all their machines could not? During the following weeks, Mira continued her daily work. She helped the colony grow stronger and more organized. She joined the medical team that studied how humans and Ralithians might share knowledge in genetics and healing. The scientists admired her focus and intelligence. She asked thoughtful questions and suggested new methods inspired by her people's ancient practices. One morning, she assisted Dr. Henry, the colony's head of biology, in testing the effects of sunlight on living cells. They compared human and Relithian samples under controlled light frequencies. Mira placed her hand near the test chamber and the sensors began to react instantly. The readings jumped beyond expected levels. The energy from her body seemed to boost cell activity inside the chamber. Dr. Henry blinked in surprise. "This is remarkable," he said. "Your energy pattern is merging with the local spectrum. It looks as if your body is learning from the planet itself." Mira's curiosity grew. "Is that possible?" Henry smiled. "Humans adapt through generations, but sometimes life finds quicker paths. Perhaps your species has hidden abilities that only reveal themselves in certain environments." That thought stayed with her long after the experiment ended. As she walked back toward her quarters, she looked up at the twin suns and wondered what kind of world could teach her body to change. That night, she dreamed. In her dream, she stood in a field of light where human and Relithian stars mixed together. The light entered her chest, flowing through her veins like warm water. When she awoke, her heart was beating fast, and the soft glow around her skin was brighter than ever. Daniel came to check on her soon after sunrise. He had noticed her absence from the early meeting. When he saw her standing by the window bathed in soft blue light, his concern deepened. "Mira, are you all right?" She turned toward him with calm eyes. "I am fine. I think something inside me is changing, but it feels right. I feel alive in a way I have never felt before." Daniel stepped closer. "If you wish, we can run full medical scans. We need to understand what is happening." She nodded. "Yes, I want to know." The medical team prepared the laboratory and placed her in a diagnostic chamber. Screens filled with patterns of light as the scanners read every part of her body. The results astonished everyone. Her cells were not only healing damaged tissue but creating new structures. Areas once inactive were now functioning. Dr. Henry looked at the results in disbelief. "Princess, your reproductive system, which your own scientists declared beyond repair, appears to be regenerating naturally. I have never seen anything like this." Mira's breath caught. For a moment, she said nothing. She stared at the glowing image on the screen. The lines that once represented emptiness were now alive with motion. Her voice trembled softly. "So it is possible." Henri nodded. "It seems your body has found harmony with our environment. The energy field of New Terra may have triggered this response. The human atmosphere is rich in certain elements that do not exist on Raylith. Combined with your biology, they may have unlocked dormant potential." Daniel looked at Mira, unsure what to say. He saw the faint tears in her eyes, tears not of sadness but of overwhelming hope. She smiled gently. "For so long they said I was broken. Perhaps I was only waiting for the right world." News of her condition spread quietly through the colony. The humans treated it as a scientific wonder, but they respected her privacy. They did not speak about it openly or turn it into gossip. Instead, they offered kindness. Workers brought her small gifts of fruit and flowers from the gardens, saying they wished her continued health. Children drew pictures of her surrounded by stars and handed them to her shyly. She kept them all in her room as reminders of the warmth that humans could show without expecting anything in return. Mira continued working in the lab, determined to understand the transformation. She spent long hours comparing her readings with the environmental data. Daniel often joined her late at night to assist with notes and calculations. Together they built models showing how energy fields interacted with living cells. The work was challenging but exciting. During one of those long evenings, a gentle rain began to fall outside. The colony lights reflected on the wet ground, turning it into a mirror of gold and silver. Mira paused to watch the rain through the window. "On Raylith, rain is rare," she said softly. "Our skies are clear most of the time. I used to think stillness was perfection, but now I see beauty in change." Daniel looked at her reflection in the glass. "Change is what keeps us alive. Without it, we fade." She turned to him with a thoughtful smile. "Your people understand life better than you know. You have lived through storms and built homes again. You fail and rise. That is strength." Her words filled the small room with quiet meaning. Daniel felt deep respect for her, not because she was a princess, but because she had learned to see the world as it truly was. In the days that followed, Mira's abilities became a subject of careful study. She helped the scientists measure the effects of her presence on nearby plants and living samples. Everything near her seemed to grow faster and stronger. It was as if her body carried the essence of renewal. The colony began to call it the harmony effect. Despite all the research, Mira herself remained humble. She still joined the workers in the fields, still played her flute at sunset, and still shared simple meals with Daniel and the others. She found joy in ordinary life, something she had never experienced in the crystal halls of Raylith. One evening, as the colony prepared for rest, Daniel brought her a small plant that had just sprouted. "This seed was one of the first we planted when you arrived," he said. "It grew slowly at first, but now it thrives. I thought you might like to keep it." Mira accepted the plant with gentle hands. Its small green leaves trembled under her touch, and a faint light shimmered between her fingers. "It feels alive, full of promise," she said. "Just like this world." She placed it by her window where the moonlight could reach it at night. Watching it grow became her quiet ritual. Each new leaf reminded her of how far she had come from the cold halls of her home world. As the months passed, Mira's body continued to strengthen. The scientists confirmed that her transformation had stabilized. They could not explain it completely, but they believed it represented a unique connection between two species. The human environment had awakened something hidden within her, something that defied all expectation. Mira often wondered what the people of Raylith would think if they knew. Would they still laugh, or would they finally understand? For now, she kept the secret within the colony, knowing the time to reveal it would come later. She stood one night on the edge of the settlement, looking up at the stars that glittered across the sky. New Terra's air was cool and soft against her skin. Daniel joined her quietly, and together they watched the endless horizon. "The stars look different here," she said. "They seem closer," Daniel smiled. "Maybe because you are finally standing where you were meant to be." She looked at him and felt a warmth that reached deep into her heart. For the first time in her life, she was not only a princess or a symbol. She was a person alive and full of possibility. The change inside her was more than physical. It was the awakening of hope. And somewhere beyond the stars, on the distant world that had once cast her aside, the fate of two civilizations was quietly beginning to shift. The morning on New Terra was calm, filled with soft golden light that stretched across the settlement. Princess Mira woke early, her body feeling different again. The energy that had begun months ago pulsed more strongly, steady and bright. She sensed a life growing inside her, something that had seemed impossible before. A quiet joy filled her chest, mingled with awe and disbelief. She had never imagined this could happen. When Daniel arrived to check on her, he noticed her unusual calmness. "You look well today," he said, smiling gently. Mira turned toward him, her eyes shining. "I feel something new," she admitted softly. "It is small, but it moves inside me. It is alive." Daniel's expression shifted from curiosity to careful concern. "Alive, are you certain?" She nodded, a small smile crossing her face. "Yes, it is unlike anything I have ever known. I do not understand how it is possible, but I feel it. I feel life within me." The news spread quietly among the colony scientists, who approached her with careful curiosity. They ran gentle scans and observed her condition without disturbing her. Every reading confirmed the same miraculous truth. Her body, once barren by Raylithian standards, was now carrying new life. It was as if the harmony between her biology and New Terra's environment had unlocked a hidden potential that even Raylithian science could not achieve. Dr. Henry spoke softly to Mira. "Your body has adapted in ways we cannot fully explain. It is a miracle, Princess. We must monitor it carefully, but it is real. A new life grows inside you." Mira's hands trembled slightly as she placed them over her abdomen. She could feel gentle movements beneath her fingertips. The sensation was delicate, almost like a whisper of wind or a soft pulse of light. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to smile, a warmth spreading through her that she had never felt before. Daniel stayed with her during the day, assisting with observations and recording readings. He admired her quiet strength. She did not panic or worry. Instead, she studied the changes in her body with careful attention, learning and adapting as humans had taught her to do. Every day she grew more connected to this new life, and every day her respect for humanity deepened. The colony adapted its routines to support her. Workers tended the gardens and fields with even greater care, preparing fresh foods that would nourish both her and the new life she carried. The children often brought her small gifts from the fields, bright flowers, smooth stones, and simple drawings, each one a quiet celebration of the miracle she had become. Mira accepted every gift with gentle hands, feeling the love and warmth of a people who had never treated her as weak or broken. As weeks passed, Mira's condition became stronger. Her body glowed softly with energy, and her movements were graceful yet filled with life. Daniel and the scientists continued their studies, observing how the human environment seemed to nurture her in ways her home planet could not. Plants nearby flourished, and living samples grew more resilient when she was present. The colony began to call her influence the life effect, a phenomenon that inspired wonder and hope among humans. One quiet evening, Mira sat near the small pond at the edge of the colony, watching the reflection of the twin moons. The water shimmered like liquid silver, and her own reflection glowed faintly from the energy within her. Daniel approached and sat beside her. "You seem more at peace than ever," he said. Mira nodded, her gaze on the shimmering water. "I am learning something important. Life is not only about survival or strength. It is about hope, connection, and care. Humans have shown me that," Daniel smiled. "It is not just humans. You have changed too. You have allowed yourself to grow in a way your people never expected." She turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "Perhaps my people only valued what could be controlled or measured. They never understood that life can surprise you, that potential can exist where it is least expected." Daniel reached out and gently held her hand. "It is rare to meet someone who learns so much so quickly. I am glad it is you who has come to us." Mira felt a warmth in her chest, a bond forming between her and Daniel. Their connection was quiet but strong, built on mutual respect, shared work, and the small moments of life they observed together. She had never expected such a friendship, much less a bond that felt like family. One morning, as Mira walked through the colony gardens, she felt a sudden and strong movement within her. The sensation was unlike anything she had experienced before. She paused and placed her hands over her abdomen, feeling the tiny shifts of life. She smiled and took a deep breath, her mind filled with wonder. Daniel came quickly when he heard her call. "Is everything all right?" he asked with gentle concern. "Yes," Mira replied softly, her voice filled with awe. "It is more than all right. The life inside me is strong. I can feel it clearly now." The scientists confirmed her observations. They marveled at how her body had created a new life despite what had once been impossible. Mira's heart swelled with gratitude. She thought of her people on Raylath who had once mocked her condition. If they could see this now, they would understand that life could bloom in ways no one expected. As the months continued, Mira prepared for the arrival of the child. She learned everything the human doctors could teach her about care, nutrition, and health. She walked daily in the fields, feeling the connection between her body, the planet, and the life growing inside her. She played her flute at sunset, filling the air with soft melodies, believing that the music could bring peace and joy to both herself and the child. One evening, Mira stood on a hill overlooking the settlement. The colony glowed softly under the twin moons, and the stars stretched across the sky like scattered gems. She placed her hands on her abdomen and whispered, "You are coming into a world that loves life. You are part human and part Raylathian, a bridge between two worlds. You will carry hope with you." Daniel stood quietly beside her. "You have grown so much, Mira. You have shown strength, patience, and care beyond what anyone expected. This child will be lucky to have you as a parent." Mira smiled and felt the movement inside her again. The connection between them was quiet but undeniable. She realized that life was more than biology. It was hope, learning, courage, and the willingness to embrace the unexpected. She looked at Daniel and whispered, "Thank you for showing me what humans can teach. I could not have discovered this alone." Daniel shook his head softly. "No, Mira, you discovered it yourself. We only helped you see it. You have done all the work, and you have given life where it was once impossible." As the days drew closer to the birth, the colony prepared a special space for Mira. It was a room filled with soft light, plants, and the quiet hum of energy from the surrounding fields. Workers and scientists contributed to make it warm, safe, and filled with life. Mira touched every corner, smiling at the thought that a child would soon grow here. Finally, the day came. Mira awoke in the early morning, feeling a strong and steady rhythm of life within her. The scientists were ready, and Daniel stayed by her side, calm and reassuring. Mira's hands trembled slightly, but her heart was full of courage. She focused on the life she had nurtured for months, on the miracle that had grown in a place where nothing had been expected. Hours passed, filled with quiet care and gentle observation. Mira closed her eyes and whispered encouragement to the child. She thought of both worlds, of Raylith and New Terra, and of the hope that life could bloom even where others said it was impossible. At last, a soft cry filled the room. Mira opened her eyes and saw the child for the first time. The baby had a soft glow reflecting both human warmth and Raylithian shimmer. Its small hands reached out and Mira felt an overwhelming wave of love. Daniel looked at her with admiration. "It is beautiful," he said quietly. Mira held the child close, feeling the small heartbeat against her chest. "Yes," she whispered. "It is the miracle of life. It is hope made real." The scientists smiled. The workers bowed their heads and the children of the colony looked on in wonder. Mira's miracle had not only brought new life, but had reminded everyone that courage, care, and perseverance could create what was once thought impossible. That night, Mira held the child and watched the twin moons rise over the settlement. She whispered softly, "You are part of both worlds. You are the bridge, the promise, and the joy that life can bring." For the first time in her life, Mira felt complete. She was no longer a princess cast aside. She was a mother, a teacher, and a symbol of hope. Her journey on New Terra had transformed her, and now she carried the future within her arms. The miracle of life was not just in her child. It was in every act of kindness, every moment of courage, and every heart that believed in the impossible. Mira understood that humans had given her more than hope. They had given her the strength to grow, to nurture, and to love. And as she looked at the sleeping child in her arms, she knew that the worlds of Raylith and New Terra would never be the same again. The day of departure from New Terra arrived quietly, filled with soft golden sunlight that bathed the settlement in warmth. Princess Mira stood on the edge of the colony platform, holding her child Solon close. The small being slept peacefully, its gentle glow reflecting both human warmth and Raylithian shimmer. Mira looked around at the colony one last time. The fields, the gardens, and the white domes had become a second home. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the people who had nurtured her, taught her, and helped bring life into being. Daniel approached her, carrying a small case of supplies for the journey. He knelt briefly to speak softly. "Mira, New Terra will miss you, but I know you are returning with more than just a child. You carry hope and inspiration for your world and ours." Mira smiled and adjusted the small blanket around Solon. "I am ready. My people may not understand yet, but I must show them what life and courage can do." The shuttle was ready, humming quietly on the platform. Mira carefully stepped aboard, carrying Solon. The humans of the colony gathered at the edges, waving gently and offering words of encouragement. Children held drawings of the princess and her child, their simple artwork full of joy and pride. Mira bowed slightly to them, feeling warmth spread through her chest. As the shuttle lifted off, she looked down at the colony that had become her second home. Every building, every tree, and every person seemed to shine with life. She whispered softly to Solon, "This is where we learned to grow. This is where life taught me how to hope." The journey through space was smooth. Mira studied the stars through the large viewing panels of the shuttle. Her mind wandered to Raylith, the crystal world she had left months ago. She remembered the grand halls, the noble faces, and the quiet judgment she had carried on her shoulders since childhood. Now she returned not as a subject of mockery but as a mother, a symbol of what humans could teach. When the shuttle approached Raylith, the view of the grand capital filled her with mixed emotion. The shining spires, the floating crystals, and the wide halls looked as perfect as ever, yet Mira felt a quiet difference within herself. She was no longer the princess who had arrived timid and uncertain. She carried life, knowledge, and hope that even the nobles could not ignore. The Raylithian court had gathered in anticipation. Whispers ran through the chamber as attendants spoke quietly about Mira's return. The nobles who had once laughed at her condition now stared in surprise. Some looked skeptical, others curious. The emperor himself stood at the center, his expression unreadable. When the doors opened, Mira stepped forward, holding Solon in her arms. The child's small hands reached out, and the gentle glow surrounding it captured the attention of every noble. Silence fell over the hall. No one laughed. No one whispered. Only awe and astonishment filled the space. Mira spoke clearly, her voice calm but strong. "I have returned not because of a gift or a joke, but because life found a way. I carry a child part Raylithian and part human. This child represents hope, courage, and the strength to grow beyond limits. Humanity taught me that what is impossible in one world may be possible in another. The court remained silent, absorbing her words. The nobles who had once mocked her felt something unfamiliar, a quiet humility. The child in her arms glowed softly, proof of what Mira spoke. It was a living example of the bond between two worlds, a miracle that no machine or decree could replicate. The emperor stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Mira. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice resonating through the chamber. "Yes, father," Mira replied. "Life cannot always be measured by tradition or expectation. I have learned that courage, care, and hope create what no law or technology alone can provide. This child is a bridge between our worlds, a symbol of unity and possibility." Slowly, the nobles began to bow their heads in respect. They could no longer view her as weak or barren. Mira's journey had changed the meaning of strength in their eyes. It was not measured by power or inheritance, but by the ability to nurture, to persevere, and to embrace life itself. The emperor reached out, gently placing his hand on Mira's shoulder. "You have shown wisdom beyond what I expected. Your journey has brought honor not just to yourself, but to our people. We welcome your child and the lessons you carry from humanity." Tears filled Mira's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. She looked at Solon and whispered softly, "You are the promise of a better future." Over the following weeks, the Relithian court began to learn from the humans through Mira's experiences. She shared knowledge about the simple ways humans nurtured life, their careful use of resources, and the joy they found in working together. Scientists and engineers listened with curiosity, taking notes and asking questions. Mira's presence inspired innovation and understanding. The child, Solon, became a symbol throughout the empire. People who had once dismissed Mira came to see the value in hope, perseverance, and the courage to embrace the unexpected. Children of Raylath were allowed to learn about the human ways of growth and care, and the bond between the two worlds strengthened. Mira continued her work, teaching both humans and Relithians about the harmony between their worlds. She walked through the crystal gardens of the capital, holding Solon's small hand. The child's laughter echoed through the hallways, a sound that had never been heard in the cold, quiet chambers before. Every smile, every gesture, reminded the people that life was not only about tradition but about learning, adapting, and embracing hope. Daniel visited occasionally from New Terra, bringing news of the colony and sharing insights about human life. Mira welcomed him with warmth, grateful for the support he had given her through every stage of her journey. Together, they watched Solon grow, marveling at the child's curiosity and energy. Solon asked questions about both worlds, about stars and plants, about humans and Relithians, and Mira answered patiently, teaching the child about harmony and courage. One evening, Mira stood on a balcony overlooking the city of Raylath, the light of the twin moons reflecting on the floating crystals. She held Solon close, feeling the small heartbeat against her chest. Daniel stood beside her, watching the city with quiet admiration. "This city looks different now," he said. Mira nodded. "It feels different too. Life has changed it. Not the buildings or the machines, but the hearts of the people. They are learning to see beyond what they thought was possible." Daniel smiled. "It is a gift you have brought, Mira, a gift of hope and understanding." Mira looked at Solon and whispered, "You are the beginning of something greater. Not just a bridge between worlds, but a symbol that even what is impossible can become real." The emperor visited the colony to see the child and to meet the humans who had helped Mira. He spoke with humility, acknowledging that the lesson she had learned and shared was more valuable than any decree or policy. The Relithians began to work with humans, sharing knowledge and building partnerships that would last for generations. Mira often thought back to the day she had first arrived on New Terra. She had been sent as a joke, dismissed for her inability to produce life. Now she stood as a living proof that hope, care, and perseverance could create miracles. She had learned that strength was not only in what one could command, but in what one could nurture. Solon grew quickly, learning both human and Relithian ways. Mira taught the child to care for the plants, to listen to the music, and to observe the stars. Solon's laughter and questions filled the palace with joy and reminded everyone that life was full of surprises and potential. In time, the story of the barren princess who returned with a child spread across the galaxy. It became a legend of hope and courage, a story told to children and scholars alike. Mira's journey showed that humanity, with its determination, creativity, and kindness, could inspire even the oldest and most rigid civilizations. Mira stood one day on the balcony, looking at the distant stars. Solon's small hand rested in hers, and Daniel stood beside her, quietly observing. She felt a deep peace. The journey that began with mockery had transformed into a testament to life, love, and the power of hope. Her heart was full, her spirit strong, and her child a living reminder that the impossible could become possible. Mira smiled, knowing that the worlds of Rayleigh and New Terra were forever changed by a journey of courage, kindness, and the miracle of life. From that day forward, the alliance between humans and Rayleighians strengthened. Both worlds learned to value hope, perseverance, and the ability to nurture life. And in the quiet moments, Mira would hold Solon close, listening to the small heartbeat that had changed not just her life, but the lives of countless others across the stars. Life, she realized, was the greatest gift of all.